Gnomes, released April of 2025. It is a PC exclusive, retailing on Steam for $9.99. Gnomes is a turn-based, rogues-like tower defense game. You have to place gnomes in strategic locations to prevent goblins from getting to the building at the center of any given map. Gnomes can usually be moved, and will need to be moved between turns to block goblins from whatever direction they're coming. The game will show you the path the goblins are going to take, and they may be coming from multiple directions, and oftentimes you can actually affect the path they're going to take. You do this simply by blocking it. This makes them reroute. But sometimes goblins can fly, and you can't block them. Or they're a type of goblin that will simply go through barriers. Placing gnomes in the right position is key, but it's also key that they're the right kind of gnome. Because there are different types of gnomes. Ones with knives that can only stab one square. Ones with flails and axes that can hit several squares at once. Ones with magic or bows that can attack from a distance. Even gnomes with guns. Every kind of gnome has a different pattern they attack in. They also have a different attack power, a different attack speed, and some of them can even stun enemies on hit. But you don't have access to all the gnomes all at once. In between attack waves, you have downtime. And there's a shop where there will be random items you can buy. Some of these items are gnome types. Also available are different crops to grow, gnome houses, and items that will affect things in some way. Of course, to use the shop you'll need money. You'll also need money if you want to place new gnomes on the map. And planting crops is what generates money for you. Though there are other ways of making money, crops will be your primary source of money in most games, and the majority of crops can only be planted in fertile soil, which you will usually have a 3x3 patch of, directly behind the building you're meant to defend. Though there are specific crops that will generate more fertile ground, and things you can get like goats to increase the amount of fertile ground, and sometimes as the map is slowly revealed to you, you will find more fertile ground that way. Crops can be trampled by goblins, and if trampled, they will need to be replanted. Crops can have many different effects in addition to generating money. Cactuses will damage any goblins that come near them. Pumpkins will spread on any fertile ground that's touching them. And some crops give bonuses to gnomes standing near them. So while their primary purpose is generating you money, they can have many other uses. In addition to crops to generate money, you'll also need to place houses for gnomes to live in. These come in many forms. The basic mushroom house, motorhomes that can be moved around the map and act as barriers for goblins, tree houses that can, well, be built in trees, and many others. Generally, one house is for one gnome, but there are relics in the shop that can increase the number of gnomes per house. The goal of the game is to last for 16 rounds, and there are 16 different environments for you to do this in, and 32 different loadouts you can start with. But in your first game, you'll only have the choice of one environment and one loadout. Everything else will be locked. But the good news is you don't actually have to beat day 16 to unlock most of the things in the game. If you can at least get to day 16, that is, survive 15 turns, you will unlock a new environment and 2 new loadouts. Technically, these things are all given at different amounts of surviving, but you'll get all 3 if you just make it to day 16. And if you survive day 16, what is your reward? You get an achievement. And I'm sure that's very important to someone out there. Now, when actually playing, there's a few things to keep in mind. First, whatever you choose to start with is just that, what you start with. You can buy anything else you might want in the shop, in theory at least, but as items in the shop are random, there is no guarantee of being able to get certain items if you have a plan. Your gnomes can level up, which will make their attacks stronger, but they only get experience for landing the finishing blow. And having the right kind of gnome placed in the right way is more important than just having a lot of gnomes. Like if the goblins are coming in a straight line, your archer gnomes are going to be very, very useful. But if the goblins are doing a lot of zigging and zagging, then something with a bigger area will be far more useful, like a wizard gnome or a gun gnome. And some gnomes can seem very similar to one another, like how both the axe and flail gnomes have the same attack pattern. But it's important to realize that the axe gnomes can attack slightly faster, but the flail gnomes also have a stun that goes along with their attack. So if you just have an axe gnome working alone, he might be slightly better. But a flail gnome really shines when there's a second gnome to take advantage of that stun period with more attacks. The different environments are more than just a graphical change. Every environment has its own gimmicks, and usually has unique goblins, like how you encounter exploding goblins in the desert, or how the graveyard environment has very little fertile ground for you to plant on, and you need to handle these different challenges in the right way. The loadouts you can take can really change things too. The early ones you unlock have one gnome, one house, one crop, and one relic. But then you can unlock ones that really change up gameplay, like one where you get no gnomes or housing and you just have plants. These can make things interesting, and you could still buy a type of house and gnomes in the shop, but the items in the shop are random and there are no guarantees. And the real balancing act is early on, as you start with a small amount of money, enough to set up a house, a gnome, and some crops. But you could also set up a couple of gnomes, but then you have less crops. After a few turns and you have some money, things generally get easier. But the hardest part is going to be those first 5 to 6 turns. Figuring out the right balance for that biome is going to be a challenge. So, is Gnomes worth your time and money? Well, I found this game to be highly enjoyable, and at a $10 price tag, I absolutely have to recommend it. And looking at the very modest requirements for this game, virtually everyone should be able to run it. I bought this game on a whim personally, and have been playing it ever since. I find it to be oddly kind of addictive. I've found in my personal playthroughs that the loadout I like to start with is called Townsfolk, as it allows you to actually make money off of the houses you build. And it starts you with the archer gnomes, which are the gnomes I find to be far and away the most useful. And if you're lucky in the shop, there are relics that can greatly enhance the archers, lowering their cooldown or letting them ignore armor. But any gnomes can be made good if you use them properly, and all of the gnomes do have enhancements that can be found in the shop. You just have to remember that placement is everything. So yes, as I said, I absolutely recommend Gnomes at its $10 price tag. And perhaps it's unreasonable to say this about a $10 game, but I honestly wish there were more of it. I've seen all the environments, and I've unlocked all the loadouts you can start with, but I'd still like more. And I do think wanting more is kind of the mark of a great game. Please do subscribe, comment, like, and tell your friends.